thank you so much for joining me in this conversation on the road less traveled. I'm really looking forward. You're almost for game the newest kid on the block, because the last 2 weeks since our team met you, they've been talking about just what an amazing entrepreneur you are, and what amazing stuff you've been doing. So I'm very excited over the next 30 minutes to get to know you better and to know the road less traveled better, your road less traveled better.
It's a real privilege and a joy to share that road less traveled. Right? It's been a phenomenal journey, and it continues to be a journey.
Great. So I'm going to start where I usually take all my guests, Mangal. Let's meet Mangal at 10 years old. Was Mangal at 10, if you took me back, I met 10-year-old Mangal. Was he entrepreneurial? Was he enterprising? Was he a risk-taking? Would I have seen versions of the Mangal that you are today, or was he entirely different?
I think he was very naughty, very experimentative,
Okay.
Kind of a rebel rouser, trouble causer.
Okay.
Right, and I'm one of 4 brothers, so
wow.
I think amongst the brothers, I think I was the most mischievous, and my parents always said that you were the most mischievous of them all.
And where would Mangal have been at age 10? Where in India?
Age 10, I was just finishing my primary sort of education, 3rd, 4th standard.
Yeah.
In Chikmagalur district. I was there. My father was an upcountry doctor in a place called Jaipura near Sringeri, right? And that's where I lived. Just me and my younger brother were studying. 2 of my brothers had already gone to Bangalore. So at age 10, I was really myself, being myself in this beautiful little village school in Jaipura, enjoying
Lovely.
the little and a lot of love with nature. It's a hot spot of the Western Ghats. My father was an upcountry doctor, and he used to really go into the interiors of the villages, and I used to accompany him sometimes.
And nature, and we'll come to that later, but I just want to allude to it. Nature is a large part of what you are doing today. So perhaps the seeds of that were already there from how you grew up, right? The exposure to that beauty and what was natural.
Absolutely. I think just, being in that kind of a nature has a tremendous bearing on your upbringing, on your wiring in the head, and I can always recall, 10, when I became 15, 20, 30, I always had that visions of being part of nature and doing something with nature, all the time.
No, that's great.
And no matter what I did, I knew someday that I would come back to nature.
Mangal, you've given me a glimpse of your very, very early childhood. It sounds lovely. You were a naughty kid in an idyllic setting, and it's somewhere already seeded the ideas for what you then eventually took forward. But let's still stay with young Mangal. Talk to me about the time you left Chikmagalur, and did you move to Bangalore? What were your late teens like?
Yeah. So, the first shift was to Bangalore, where I joined my brothers at Bishop Gardens.
Okay.
And it was quite fascinating journey, because I came from Kannada medium. Luckily, I had my brothers, and for me to sort of cope and adapt and to be sort of accepted, you can imagine what one would go through, right? Being made fun of, etc. Yeah. So I sort of coped up with all that, and I think it just took me about a year and a half to be my own in that sense, and then be on par, if you will, right? So, yeah, again, I was, I always had some tricks up so that I always felt, important, validated, and really my sports blossomed out there, because I was always very physical, very athletic, I played all the sports that was out there, and those days we had something called as compulsory games.
Yes.
As boarders, we had to play every day, right? And we had seasons, hockey season, cricket season, football season, and we had to play ball, table tennis, athletics, all of that.
Yeah, no, sports is a great creates a level playing field like nothing else, and it also builds such immense character. So there is Mangal, come from Chikmagalur, lands in Bishop Cotton's, still perhaps in the early days of being comfortable in Kannada, but his ability to be persistent, to do what it takes, and to embrace where you were led you to not just becoming comfortable in the language, but also excelling in sports and creating an identity for yourself. Is that a good nutshell?
Absolutely, yeah, and a good nutshell. And I was also a good sportsman. So every game that I took, I had an important role to play. For example, I was a school wicket-keeper batsman. So so this
So
gave me,
leadership was already a part of you at that point.
perhaps it was emerging. It was just blossoming. Yeah, yeah.
As you were finishing school, Mangal, were you, because I still don't know what I want to do in life
Mhm.
many years later, but I do know there are a lot of kids uh, who fall into two buckets, right? A lot being defined by what society expects. You will finish school, you'll get a good job, security, and all of that. Or you'll have the few people who want to break the mold and say, no, I want to, which is more now, but at that time, not many were thinking about being entrepreneurs. As you were finishing school, what did your future look like for you? What were you thinking?
No, well, I was not thinking of a very, big envisioned future at that point in time, right? It was just to say, we were still having fun and I wanted to continue to have fun, right? So, in fact, I was telling my dad, why don't I do my pre-university in Bangalore itself so that, I can play cricket and I can be, whoever I am. And, but somehow since my brothers already started going to college in Udupi, Manipal,
Mm.
I had to follow suit, and I did my pre-university there, right? But one thing I knew at the very beginning is that I'm more cut out for commerce, for economics, for business, for marketing, and that's the journey I took. So I took a very interesting group which had just come out that time for pre-university, for PUC. I took stats and economics,
Ah,
right? Statistics and economics in my PUC, along with the commerce and accounts. So that gave me I didn't know where, but I knew that those
give you
ingredients
some
were
skills.
important to me. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, that's correct.
Did you then go on to take up a job, Mangal?
No,
You
well,
tell me. Now
uh,
we reach the exciting point.
yeah,
What
yeah, it's a very exciting journey. So I did my pre-university in a small college called MGM College in Udupi, and then after that I wanted to, move to Mangalore. So
happened?
because of my cricketing abilities, there was always this, people who are good in a game, you're sort of targeted, or you attract yourself into some good institution. St. Aloysius College was one of those good
Mm.
institutions in Mangalore.
Mm.
And I happened to approach them, and I got admissions for my BCom there.
Mm.
Quite fascinating. So I joined, and I played the college team the very first. Again, I played all sports there. In the very first year, I played for the college, and that's where my leadership started to really blossom. That's what I
Mm.
felt. But during those, commerce and that camaraderie and that competitive landscape, playing all the games, and then something phenomenal happened in the second year of degree.
Mm.
The guy who was to lead the cricket team,
Mm.
right, went and joined his family business, right?
Mm.
And there was a sort of a vacant spot, and I was still in my second year degree, and
Ah.
and this guy who was supposed to be in the final year, lead the college team, went away. So I went and grabbed that spot, right?
You saw an opportunity
I
and you
saw
said,
an opportunity, and I said, "Look, I will fill it." And then, along with opportunity comes responsibility, right? And
absolutely.
and, and then, I suddenly had a very young team with me. I was myself in the second year, and I had a very young team of extremely talented cricketers, right?
Mm.
And then we went on to build one of the biggest, beaters at that point in time, right? One of the best teams. So we won tournaments that St. Aloysius had not won for 20 years, right?
Lovely.
So we went on to build a character in the team, super, charged cricketers, talented, phenomenally talented cricketers. And I still, sometimes we are all in a Facebook group. Sometimes we say, look, when we look back, we punched much beyond our weight.
Lovely.
Yeah.
No, that sounds like just the most exciting start to a trigger for who you are today. So there you are, seizing an opportunity, leading a cricket team, winning matches they'd never been able to win before.
Yeah.
And then what happens? Let's jump a few years, talk about
Well,
where. Um,
while at St. Aloysius, it always this question, after BCom what, right?
yeah, all of
Uh,
us
you know,
grapple with that. Yeah.
and then, I had to make sure that I had to live up to my potential in my academics as well, right? So in that class, I
Yeah.
was one of the few guys who got a first class as well in BCom. So which gave me now I could go and at least, have a decent roadmap for a career, right? I had a first class.
You had a good platform.
Yeah, I had a great platform, and it was then in one of those meal times I came across an economics professor of mine. His name is Soundarajan, great guy, and he got out a paper clipping and showed it to me and said, "Look, there is something new coming up in this country called Masters in Computer Applications, MCA, right? For the first time, right? And this college in Coimbatore is offering it. I think, if you can get this, right, because because it was open to BCom also,
Yeah.
with the maths background, with the statistics background,
So
right?
it's perfect almost.
It was sort of perfect. It was open to me, and this professor said, made it a point to remark that if you do get this, then when you pass out, you will easily get 7,000 to 8,000 rupees as salary.
Wow.
That
Wow.
was a
Yeah,
big deal. And he
princely
said,
sum at that point. Yeah.
yeah, it sounded interesting. I picked the queue and I wrote to the college and I got the applications and I just filled up everything, sent it over, and to my surprise, they called me for the entrance exam.
Wow.
Right?
And the college was in Bangalore?
No, it was in Coimbatore.
Coimbatore. Okay.
Yeah, it was in Coimbatore, and yeah, it's quite fascinating. This journey, this part of the journey was also quite fascinating. So I went and wrote the entrance exam, and I did quite well in the entrance exam, and I was qualified. So from 1,500, they brought down the list to 60, out of which 30 would be picked. And at that time, they called us for an interview, right? And I could sense that the interview would be quite rigorous in the sense
because the shortlist was so intense.
Yeah, and I'm sure that you'll be tested on your maths and as well as economics, and they could go into detail in
It wasn't going to be a breeze.
Correct. So what I did was I went a couple of days, prior to my interview, and I caught hold of the college cricket captain, right? I woke him up one early morning and I said, look, I am so and so, and I hear you're the cricket captain. I just captained the Mangalore University and I just finished my BCom, and I'm here knocking on your college right now. And I have an interview that I've come here for. So, if you get me here, we could play great cricket and we could have great camaraderie for a few years, right?
You were being resourced.
That's one of the traits of an entrepreneur, right?
Yeah.
You've got to be resourceful. So this captain was quite fascinated. He brought in his other players, and we had breakfast together, and actually he invited me to the nets that evening, and I knew why, because obviously to test.
You've got to believe, but you have to believe what you see too.
Yeah, and then it was great, and they could see that I could play to some caliber, and the interesting part is the wicket keeper of the college was passing out, and they didn't have a good quality wicket keeper, right? So
you had luck too.
Exactly, I had a lot of luck too, so everything plays together, right? Resourcefulness, luck, and obviously
opportunity, hard work meets luck, and that's what success is usually.
Yeah. Absolutely. And these boys started to work for me, right? And I went for the interview. I failed quite miserably. I can tell you that I would not have made it, right? So, and And these boys said, we will go to the director, we will go to the physical director, and they did their part. And anyway, but I had to leave the college after my interview, and just hoping for the best. By then, I had started an articleship with Fraser and Ross here in Bangalore.
Okay.
Right, for chartered accountancy, right? So, because those were the only routes, right? You're a doctor, an engineer, or a chartered accountant, or a lawyer. I mean, those were the routes. So I also, not at my will, but I had to take that.
It was the road mostly traveled.
Yeah, it was the road mostly traveled, and I was just hoping, that I would get this MCA somehow, so that I would get back to college, and because there's so much fun to have in college, right? So I wanted the fun, I wanted the camaraderie, I wanted the games, and I knew that those 3 years were so crucial to my development.
Yeah.
Yeah, and as luck would have it, and after some tantalizing, few weeks, they actually gave me a call and said, "Can you come tomorrow and pay the fees?"
Lovely. I feel like clapping at this moment. It's like a Lagan moment. So,
I had no money, but anyway, I said, I'm going first. So I had no money. I went there. And then those days, no mobile, but I called my father and said, look, I'm here. I have to pay the fees. And, and somehow my father encouraged me on this new journey. So my father was quite supportive of these new things, these untraveled things, right? The rest of the family were not.
And that plays such a huge role to have one person on your side.
Absolutely. So somehow my father called some of his friends, arranged, and I got the money to pay the fees, and I sorted it out. And then I, said I will take 2 days to come back and join the hostel and on all that kind of stuff, right? So it was so much fun. I went back and thanked my buddies there, the college cricketers, especially the captain and the physical director. They actually convinced that I deserve an opportunity, and they pulled me in. And here is another fascinating story. The reason why I got in was one of the kids, who was a topper, when was applying for IIT, so he didn't even respond, didn't come back. Right?
So basically, I see a common theme in your life story. One person goes missing. And there you are.
And there I am.
At the right time.
To grab that opportunity, right? So in a way, a first part of my life was mostly on this theme of opportunism, right? So that was what it was. And then I finished, those 3 years of college. But the interesting part is the guy who didn't come came back. By then I had already taken his slot.
Oh no!
Luckily for him, somebody else went out and he got in, right? And we became the greatest friends. We went on to start business, and we created a company together. It's quite fascinating, that story too, right? So for the first company that I created is not with him, but it was in Chennai, right? So I passed out of college. My father said, look, you've done well. You've done well in sports, you've done well in academics, you've done well. Now it's up to you to figure out your journey. And, here is 500 rupees. So I thought, shit, this reality has come. Right?
So which year are we talking about, Mangal?
So this was 1987.
Okay.
I was about 24 years old.
Mm-hmm. So 22, 500 in hand, and now you have to make it yourself.
I went to Chennai. And I just wanted to meet friends, catch up. And all these cricketing boys were all from Chennai, whom I had a great 2 to 3 years of fun with, right? So I went to meet them, and in fact, one of them was so kind and generous to host me in his house. And so I started to, first few days in Chennai, first time big city kind of thing, right? So, and I started to meet people in the industry, the computer industry, right? In the meantime, I had already attended a placement interview, the guys, the campus interview by HCL, right? HCL were one of the first few companies in India at that time. They were doing campus interviews, and I actually attended the campus interviews, and they were looking for hardcore techies to program, and not a guy like me. But
you went.
Right. So, that was good in that sense. So I went to Chennai. Met with friends. Then I saw, friends working in Computer Hotline, Computer Point. These were all, legendary computer outlets of that time, right? So the PCs had just come in, they were making waves, and
It was an
PC.
inflection point
It
for
was an
the country.
inflection point, and PCs were entering business. Those were the days of two drives, no hard disk had, actually
Yeah.
come into being, and people had bought PCs. With people were running their business payrolls and stuff like that in 5.25, floppy disk drives and stuff like that. Right?
Yeah.
Those were the days, and I could see that. Wow, this is superb. So a computer those days cost about $1,20,000 for that piece, right?
Wow.
That piece, right? And people paid, and some of them had 5 computers in their company, one computer for each function, and those were the early days, right? So, and here I saw an opportunity. That's where I figured out there was a friend of mine who was already, wanting to do this, right? And he was a techie, right? And I said, look, there's a phenomenal opportunity for third-party maintenance, right? So third-party maintenance means the only big, obstacle, ahead of you is to convince the customer to come away from a manufacturer to you, right? That's a big deal, of course.
And in
right?
the early days, trust, what does
Trust,
it mean?
exactly. So I was telling him, look, if I'm able to do that, right, build that trust and bring the customers, then with just few contracts we could get capital.
Yeah.
Right? We don't have to borrow money, we don't have to do anything. All we need now is a toolkit which costed then 500 rupees, soldering iron, meter, and this and that, just a small kind of a toolkit was 500 rupees. So two techies and myself, we said, okay, let's go and test the market, right? So I went out and I somehow got that confidence, right? That I think it's possible to succeed here, right? So what I did is I wrote a letter to a friend of mine. While all this, we're still experimenting. A friend of mine is working in ICL in the UK, and I asked him to, courier me, a service contract.
Just so you know what it would look like.
Looked like, right? No emails those days. So finally, the physical copy of the contract came. So I connected with another lawyer in Chennai, a friend of ours, and then we said, look, let's simplify it for our needs, right? And that's what we did. We simplified. I went to a printer. We composed. This our company was called Computer Allied Technical Services. The first name is CATS. We love the name.
You all were thrilled with yourselves.
Yeah, the CATS. And then so I put out this contract, and I went to customers with this well-printed contract, that I would give, along with a proposal saying that we would take care of it. And I had a few things that were quite, advantages for them. For example, I would give replacement if anything went wrong. I would give preventive service, etc. It was too good. Customers sign in the very first month, right? And then, over the space of, I think, 6 months, we had collected 9 lakhs of rupees from annual maintenance contract.
Wow.
9 lakhs of rupees in 1987 is probably like 3 crores today, right? So it's like
it's a lot of money.
A lot of money, and that was how we built the company. That capital we got. So we were resourceful. We went out. We got that money. We built it out, right? So we really built, a good office after that. We had a service center, we had a sales office, and one of our friends was kind enough to, sublease the office to us. We were born, right?
Lovely.
Yeah. So from scratch, right? So that's what I love. I love situations where from deep ambiguity, you come into clarity and it
that's exciting. You shape something, right? I'm a shaper too. I was just telling somebody, I love the 0 to 1 phase of anything.
Yeah. Absolutely. And so this is when, I figured out that we can grow this business, right? there's a lot of money in trading. There's a lot of money in selling computers. Now, we could do, wide area networking in companies. Believe me, I am so fortunate to be in that era where hardware business systems integration was extremely profitable, right? It
Not
was,
like now.
no, now it's commoditized completely. Those days it was really a value added service, and with good relationships, if you could go into good companies, you could really get the price that you want. People would pay, and we built, and that's why as an entrepreneur, you should always have that extra bit of profitability. You must create that extra, because you're going to make mistakes. There's going to be waste. And
One is profitability, but also perhaps be slightly forward thinking in what you already anticipated was the need, and being able to, because you could have very well fit into the gap of this XYZ is what is required, and I will provide XYZ. But you said XYZ is what's required, but I'm going to add 1, 2, 3 to layer it, right? The foresight to do that.
Yeah, somehow that foresight was always there, and then you can see that my company got quite successful. We were already doing 2-3 crores turnover. We had already come into the 90s, and that is when I called my classmate and buddy, who was a genius. Actually, he's one of the finest minds. He's still one of the finest minds I've ever met.
What's his name, Mangal?
His name is Prakash Neelakantan.
Okay.
Prakash now lives in New York, and he works for a large company, and extremely brilliant guy. So he was working for the National Institute of NCST, National Center for Software Technology, right, in Mumbai. So I somehow convinced him, Prakash, I think the time is right. Our company is quite, we have some resources. We could start investing in a software development arm, if you will, right? And if you come back, if you can join me, then we can, in reasonable terms, build this software arm, right? And Prakash loved the idea, and one fine day I was receiving him at the train station in Coimbatore, and I was living in this little apartment, and we came, and I still remember the excitement of not going to sleep that night, right? Chatting and discussing that whole
idea.
It's just that chat, saying that what a future we have before us, right? And what a timing this is, right? And this is,
the world is your oyster.
Absolutely. And at that point in time, the entire IT industry, hardware, software, system software, application software, all put together 800 crores, right? That 800 crores could be today a couple of $1 billion, but look at where the industry has gone. Where are we today? We are a couple of $100 billion industry, right? So we were in that. We were in that inflection point in the beginning of that journey, right? At the base of that mountain, right? So it was just a fascinating journey, but we were in Coimbatore. And so I started to hunt for customers. See, that's the thing, right? Somehow we had the ability to go and identify customers for what we think we could deliver, right? Because I think, identifying customers and having customers to pay you for what you propose to them, I think is the key for any enterprise,
any business, right? It's the classic unit economics. If you can't get a customer to pay for one piece of what you give them, no matter what, you're not going to be able to scale a business.
Absolutely.
And if you do that, that's where you can layer it. So you were always focused on building enough of people to actually pay for your product.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what we did. And we found a few customers very quickly. So we got our practice. Our software team went up to something like 10, 12 people. And that's the timing when I started offices in other places, right? So naturally, as an entrepreneur, I would think, wherever I could get big top management connects, that's the place I would go and start a business. So I came back to Mangalore and started a branch of our company there.
So how large are you at this point as employees? How many do you remember?
We were about 30 people.
Okay.
30 to 40 people.
Okay.
Because we had the software people also about 10, maybe 30 to 40 people. And that's the time We started out Mangalore, added another 10 people. We already had the creme de la creme of Mangalore. And Mangalore Stock Exchange is one of my customers for hardware, systems integration, cabling, and all of that kind of stuff, right? And that is when, this is we are already into the mid 90s now, 94 or something like that. SEBI made it mandatory for all stock exchanges in India. There were 23 of them at that point in time, that they should automate.
Oh my God, again, there's a gap and an opportunity for you.
Yeah, but just hear how it sort of emerged, right? It was not. So these guys had this stringent mandate from the SEBI saying that they had to automate within 1 year. So they started to obviously look out for solution, because they had to see who is theirs. And there were 3 vendors at that point in time: TCS, CMC, Wipro. Right? All of them had a foreign partner for the software part, right? And obviously, the hardware also came from, some mini computer provider, maybe, HCL, CMC, all of them had different relationship. So the exchange asked my help, saying that, can you guys help us to write an RFP and evaluate an RFP and choose a vendor? So that was the okay, and we'll give you, here's a small proposal, we could do that for you. But the only thing is, could you actually send 2 of our guys to the Bombay Stock Exchange just to understand a little bit of what's all this about, outcry system, how some parts of it automated there already. So Bombay Stock Exchange was already automating.
Yeah.
The National Stock Exchange had just been born. They were in building blocks kind of scene. This is 1994. So the Mangalore Stock Exchange, the president, who was quite close to me, he wrote a letter and actually sent them as employees of the Mangalore Stock Exchange.
Lovely.
And my colleague Prakash and a couple of other guys actually went and learned a lot in that 1 month. See, very resourceful, bright people. They picked things very quickly, came back. And Prakash actually told me, no worries, we can do this job very well, right? So we wrote the RFP, we put out to these 3 companies, and they all came with their responses, techno-commercial responses. The lowest was 8 crores, the highest was 11 crores, right? The exchange had no money to buy these kind of solutions, right? So since we were sort of insiders, we were at these board meetings, we got to see that they got no more than 2 crores.
Wow. So you knew exactly what you had.
And now I went back to my team, Prakash, and said, look, can we build something, right? And give them a solution for 2 crores, win this deal, and begin a whole new journey, right? It's tremendous potential, right? So we started that, and I, went to the management and said, we could do this. We presented, everything was very compelling, except that we were not a large enough company, right? Not credible enough, right? To give, we were probably 3-4 crores in turnover, but, to get a 2 crore deal, we didn't, So there was this dilemma we had, right? So our solution was based on Microsoft Windows NT, which was just emerging, on Intel boxes. So we were one of the first companies in the world to attempt a trading platform on commodity hardware and software platform, right? So we said, okay, why not we actually tell them about it and see if so we went and talked to Microsoft. They got excited because they didn't have anything at that point in time doing mission critical stuff, right? They were still considered as Mickey Mouse technology.
Yeah.
So we went, and I still recall the day Meena Ganesh, one of our eminent entrepreneurs of today, she actually flew down to Mangalore. We had several meetings with the stock exchange, and then finally we convinced them. We signed the agreement with them.
Wow.
Yeah, and Microsoft came in as a project manager, and to give them that extra assurance that we will make sure that it's delivered.
So with their backing, suddenly you became large enough and you knew you had the capability to do it.
Absolutely, and then we pulled off this spectacular win. Okay, now fast forward, at the back of that, we won 4 more stock exchanges. very quickly. But I made one condition to the Mangalore Stock Exchange. I said, look, I'm willing to do all these at cost because 2 crores we make no money. I'm spending more than 50 lakhs on the software, but I'm only getting 25 lakhs. So there's a lot of investment that's going on. And therefore, I would like to keep the intellectual property. I will not part with the intellectual property. The intellectual property will remain with my company, Ellen, at that time. So, everything was agreed and we made this happen. And immediately at the back of this deal, we won 4 stock exchanges and the license fees alone paid for all these effort. And we suddenly started, thinking, okay, now we are becoming a product company, right? So
we're with the big guys.
We are with the big guys. We can now, again, the same philosophy, right? We were punching much beyond our weight, right? A small company, dreaming big, massive proof of concept. And this is when a Swedish company took note of us in a securities industry fair in Kuala Lumpur. Yeah. There's a lot of story to that, but I just like to, in the interest of time, just to fast forward a little bit. And we went on to sign a historical deal with them that they would take our software to other exchanges in the world. They themselves were an exchange trading company, but their solutions are all in the $20-30 million range, right?
Here was an affordable solution.
There was an affordable solution for the tier 3, tier 4 exchanges, and they had nothing with them. And they found it very strategic. So we did a fantastic partnership. They flew down here. This was, I still remember, in the May of 1998, right? Lovely. And we had already moved to Bangalore by then from Coimbatore, right? And
you were the big guys now.
And we announced ourselves to be a product company, a software product company, which means we had to cut off all our systems integration business, just throw it out, right? We had 8-10 crores of business, which was
you had to write off
not that profitable. Yeah. So we told our employees, whoever wants to take it can take it. If you want to, go with it, no problem. We're going to focus on being a security industry specialized technology company. Wow. Right. So we did this deal, and quite crazily, we didn't get a single deal for more than a year. And just imagine our plight, right? We had invested, we had cut off all our business, and suddenly we are
and you made a choice. You were going this route, and suddenly you're in a situation where you don't get the business that you anticipate.
Absolutely, and you're burning through, right? And then suddenly we said, "Oh, we got to do something, and also build the broker's software, not just the exchange, but the broker's side software, order management side." Okay, so we went and invested on that. So we had to go and empanel in the National Stock Exchange, which had already emerged by then and already rapidly growing. The National Stock Exchange was already, just in 4 years, they were almost overtaking the Bombay Stock Exchange at that point in time. So we wanted to empanel ourselves, but somewhere we are hitting the roadblock there, and these are moments of despair, right? Yeah. When you look back, I say, I came back home for lunch. I used to walk home every day for lunch. And I said, this is really terrible, that all doors are closed. We are going nowhere now, right? So
what are you thinking at that time? Were you, if I met you at that point, it must have been one of your most stressful times.
It was stressful, but not without hope, right? So what I picked the papers up and I read an article that the National Stock Exchange were actually starting a fully owned subsidiary to build this order management system, right? And to sell it to the brokers. They have a captive market, right? And that's why they were stonewalling us, right? That was it's like a bombshell. Yeah, it's a bombshell. You know that all your effort is a waste. Now the future will be a waste. I didn't give up. I went back to the office and I wrote a letter to the Chief Technology Officer, Satish Naralkar, one of the most solid guys I've met, a phenomenal technology projects guy, one of the early employees of NSE. I wrote him a letter. I had not met him, and he's not an easy guy to meet, but I just wrote him a letter saying, look, I read this article. Congratulations. This is the way to go. That's fantastic. But the anomaly I see in this article that you're going to take 9 months to go to market. Why? We've already built a technology. We can come and we can do a joint venture and you can go to market within 90 days.
Lovely.
I just sent him that note, it's like a shot in the dark, right?
Huh.
Next day, I had a call from the stock exchange.
Oh my God.
One of his assistants called me and said, do you really have this technology with you guys? We said, yes, we do. Can you make a presentation to us? Can you come tomorrow? He said, no, we can't come tomorrow because we are busy in 2 other contracts. Right? So we can only come maybe 2 or 3 days later. Right. Yeah. So we went over to Mumbai, me and Prakash. Right. And this is another story I will tell you another day, but just to, fast forward, we made a fantastic presentation to them. Prakash did an excellent job, being the techie that he is, and his ability to convince, his ability.
He knew his stuff.
He knew his stuff. He knew the domain so well. He had learned so much. He architected the solution, and he could easily figure out what they wanted and convince them. Right. That evening, we called Satish Naralkar out and his team for drinks at the Oberoi's.
No contracts in hand, pitching for business, but you're going to take them out to drinks at the Oberoi's.
Yeah, that story I will tell you because it may be not that appropriate on this particular call. It may be too time consuming, but just fast forwarding on that dinner meeting at midnight, quite drunk, I must say. Satish Naralkar popped out a question to me and said, look, if I were to buy your entire software, lock, stock, and barrel, what would it cost? Right. So it was a question that I had to respond in 10 seconds, right?
After a few drinks.
After a few drinks. I can't tell him that, look, I'll go back to my board and come back. I can't say.
You don't lose an opportunity like that. Yeah.
$1 million those days are 4 crores. I told him it'll cost you 4.5 crores if you want to. And I could see Satish Naralkar throw his hand up and said, it's too expensive. Right. But the way he said it, I picked
that he was interested.
He was interested. Right. And somehow I knew that I had to now extend my stay in Mumbai until I had got reasonable, interest and traction building and all that stuff. And I told him, okay, this is something that we should discuss. I'm going to be in Mumbai for a few days. And well, so from that, we went on to the next day. I stayed in Mumbai for a week and concluded the deal for 3 crores. Wow. And picked up my advance check of 1 crore and came back and saved the company. We were totally broke,
So. Here's a question I must ask. What would you have settled for?
I would have settled for 2 crores even. I would have.
You did well.
If the guy pushed me hard, 1.5 crores too, right?
3 crores, you did well.
Yeah, we did. I think we did very well, and we saved the company, and that was again a very visible deal because the media picked up and was a big deal in a partnership with NSE, like a joint venture sale of technology. Really, I would say landmark deal for us. Even more, I would say, a marquee than what we had done with Sweden. Right? That's the time we won this deal, and then we were now ready to raise money. So we started to put out business plans. We were already doing work with Intel Capital, ICICI Capital. So a lot of people sort of started to get interest because now we are generating cash. We got profits. Okay, it's moving well. So we went ahead and raised money from Intel. And then the Swedes started to pick up deals for us, right? So we picked up 2 deals, one in Italy, one in Nigeria, cash rich, right? Suddenly we were really, growing to be 150 people company, right? We started to look at building new products.
Because this is also the downside of that overnight success, though there lots goes into that, is you also have to be suddenly prepared for that kind of growth.
Yeah. Absolutely. You have to be not only prepared, but also, you must also have that eye on the opportunity as to where you're going to go next. Right?
Because you can't drop it when it's come to you like that.
Yes. And we knew that, exchange is too much a niche to play in.
Yeah.
There are maybe 300-400 exchanges in the world. It's too small a market. And whatever you do, you will not grow quite, spectacularly in that sense, right? So we had to get into the brokerage space, and NSE had given us that opportunity, right? And I knew that the next step should be New York, right? So we discussed with the board, and we had Intel, and TVG Krishnamurthy came on board. He became the chairman of the board, and with all their permission and guidance and encouragement, I moved to New York in 2000.
This was early 2000.
I would say in the middle of 2000. And then I started to set up the infrastructure, the office there, trying to hire people and, trying to feel the market and all of that. And so by 2001, June, I had set up office on Broadway, 140 Broadway, right opposite the World Trade Center in the financial district, right? It was like just a fantastic, that office in New York.
Where you had to be in New York.
Yeah. And we were there, and we were all making those inroads and all those connections when September 11 struck.
Wow.
So I went through firsthand that entire episode and the aftermath of September.
You were there in New York.
I was there. I saw the second plane hit. I'm right in front of the World Trade Center. Wow. I lived 3 blocks away. My office was right in front of the World Trade Center. And I saw the second plane hit. We saw everything collapsing, first the second tower and then again the first tower. Us running, going up Chinatown and trying to escape that day, right? So
I already see context for another conversation, but in the interest of time, Mangal, what did this do for you now that world has suddenly changed? Where do you go the next few years?
The world has changed, right? I mean, because we had cash, we survived as a company. We slashed, we probably went down from 200 people to 100 people, 110 people, right? So we could survive, but somehow I, as an entrepreneur, didn't want to give up New York. So we gave up office and everything, we cut costs, but we said we must remain here because when the opportunity comes back, we should be here and not just, close and leave, right? So that actually helped us a lot because in a way it was great. In a way it was bad because business didn't pick up for, I would say, 18 months. We lost almost the entire 2002, right? September 11, 2002 was almost gone. And again, we had to look for deals, no? Yeah. The kind of business we were in, it's all spiky, right? We don't have consistent revenues. We had some annual maintenance contracts coming from some exchange customers, but we didn't have enough to feed. We needed deals. And then, in early 2003, we struck a deal in Portugal, right? A few million euros. And that again gave us back the health. And that's the time I realized that it's too dangerous to hang on. We should either do an M&A or raise more money or do whatever it took, right? So that's the time.
You had to hedge your bets.
Yeah, start to hedge your bets. And so while we were still, valuable, looking good, we started to knock the doors, right? So we won another deal in Canada. We started to grow. And then, we put ourselves out in the market in that sense, right? So in late 2004, we did an M&A with Headstrong. Headstrong was a capital markets services company. They didn't have products and components. So it was a good strategic buyout for them. For us, it was a good exit, and that's how it happened, right? So yeah.
Mangal, your story is so fascinating. I've really lost track of time, but we have perhaps another 10 minutes left. Yeah. I want to use that to Mangal of today. I think a lot of the questions that I would have asked you in your lovely narration of your story, you've answered them. The trials, the tribulations, the qualities. So I want to spend the last 10 minutes on you today. Little bit of an insight in the ecotourism bit that you're focused on, and then we'll save the last 3 minutes for some fun questions that I have.
Yeah, absolutely, for sure. So I reflected deeply on what I want to do next during that 3 years of lock-in period, the golden handcuff period. Yeah. And thinking, should I, there were people asking me, come on, let's do something in the banking space, insurance space, come, let's build a technology, money can chase you, right? A few people were backing me. But that's a time I reflected and said, what do I really want to do next, right? What will give me joy, right?
And somewhere there did that 10-year Mangal
Exactly.
come.
Yeah.
Came out. Yeah.
And that's a time I felt that I think my future is with nature, right? So I somehow figured that, and I made an internal call. Yeah, what that is, I don't know, but I am going to be working with nature and communities and creating something very valuable in nature. When I say valuable, not just the economic value, but also the community value, the nature value itself, right? So, and then I had luckily some resources. I went and bought 2 pieces of nature, right? This is a big story, but just to cut the story, I put in a good team. I looked around Karnataka. I wanted to pick up a coastal ecosphere and a mountain ecosphere in the Western Ghats. Did that. Today we have 2 pieces. One is a 65 acre oceanfront piece in Kumta, and another 30 acres up in the Ghats near Kollur in Udupi district. Both fascinating pieces of property. And then,
I've seen pictures that the team's been sharing, and I'm really jealous that they went there. But yeah, anyway, so that's what you focused on now.
Yeah, and then when I finished my lock-in period, so I slowly started to, and then started to translate, and then I quickly figured out, look, you can't be doing tourism, ecotourism just off the blocks, right? So
you have
there's
to
community
really do it.
Working with land, working with people are extremely complex and tedious, right? It's nothing like the first journey that I had. Yeah. So here I'm the entrepreneur. You have to come out with an innovation mindset, collaborative mindset, right? In the past, that was more opportunistic in that sense, right? You just move to the next and try and see what you can do. But here, the level of patience is 10x. Right? So, no matter how you think that you needed to get this done fast, you will get slowed down, and you just have to accept that and move slowly, right? So, and that's what we've done. So Panchabhuta Conservation Foundation is what we started 10 years ago, with the vision of creating and spawning a responsible natural economy in which, there will be a lot of nature entrepreneurs. There will be a lot of anchor projects, wellness projects, ecotourism projects, which are, kickstarted by us, in a setting of Uttar Kannada here, in Kumta, and we would impact positively the lives of about 50,000 people. And with that vision, we started this whole journey, right? So right now we've completed an exemplar for responsible tourism. We have a lovely little retreat called Panchabhuta retreat in Kumta. You're most welcome to come and experience it. We have curated some fascinating nature immersion and experiences around the place. My biggest accomplishment has been to convince my wife, and my wife is now part of this whole journey together, and now she's curating the whole culinary journey as well. And then this is going to go quite far, this whole journey. And another thing that's now spun off is we've also creating natural cosmetics. That's another story by itself. Another day I will discuss. But the momentum is quite good now, right? So we have a lot of land to expand into. So the way I look is from our own stable, we'll bring out a few ventures. We will have an extraordinary number of nature entrepreneurs, as a supply chain or collaborating with us, right? And they could be in the area of food agro, they could be in the marine value addition, they could be in responsible construction, they could be in...
You're really creating an entrepreneurial ecosystem apart from your core business.
Absolutely. And that's what is exciting, and that's what brought me to game, and we're having a lot of fun, and I believe that this will go a very long way, and out of this whole thing, there's a very fascinating piece of trying to create a wetlands eco park and an ecotourism in all of this, right? So that's another discussion, another day. If once translated, that would be quite a fascinating.
I'm super excited to do a second conversation with you. But thank you, Mangal. I'm just going to ask you some fun questions.
Yeah, yeah, sure.
I mean,
Yeah.
what do you do when you're not being an entrepreneur? What do you do for fun?
Well, I love. I'm a morning person. I get up very early, right? And I somehow want to tune into nature very early in the morning, into the bird sounds. I fortunately live on a beach, so I love the sound of the oceans. I go into the beach. I look at whether it's low tide or high tide. If it is low tide, then I have good real estate to run on the beach. So I do my sports. I do paddle boarding. I do kayaking. I do
Lovely.
an hour and a half of this morning ritual for me. This is to me very fascinating.
So you live on the resort then, at
Yes, yes,
home?
yes,
Ah, okay,
yes, yes.
lovely.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
do you watch content on net? Do you watch Netflix, or you're just such a nature guy?
No,
You
I'm a completely nature guy. I don't have a TV there, but I do have a TV in the Panchabhuta retreat. So if there is a World Cup match or something to catch up, we always can do that, you know. So,
do you have a favorite book?
I'm a big fan of Edward de Bono.
Yes.
And one of his books deeply resonated with me when I was a young entrepreneur. Maybe 20 years ago, 25 years ago, I read something called as Tactics. Right? Edward de Bono interviewed maybe 50 successful people in different spheres of life. And their insights, he brought them into this book called Tactics, which sort of, stays with me all the time. Yeah.
Lovely. And my last question, when you're not at your own resort, and which sounds like heaven, you
Mm-hmm.
have a different place that you go off to, or you don't need to.
Well, no. I love travel. I love to experience and experiment other places. My favorite destination is Portugal, actually.
Oh, lovely. I love Lisbon. I mean, of course,
Oh,
I've been to Portugal, but
the whole of Portugal I love, but Lisbon especially. I mean, they have a magical blend of
the
culture,
lights, the
food,
cobble streets,
life.
the
It's just
food.
amazing. Yeah, yeah, it's just phenomenal. And somehow, if we can bring back some of that drama into what we are creating here, I think it'll be extremely aesthetic, beautiful, uh, and actually heartwarming. You
What
know.
a lovely note to end our conversation. If you can replicate that,
Yeah.
more power to you, Mangal. I came into this conversation completely blind. And I'm just so happy that we had this opportunity, and I've loved listening to your journey, and thank you so much for sharing it so openly.
No, such a delight. It's always a privilege to share the journey. It could be useful to someone someday. And truly, thank you so much, Sandhya. And you had very insightful questions. It was really nice chatting like a friend. So it was really nice.
Thanks. Thanks, Mangal.
Thank you. Appreciate.